I'm your host, Marc Bernstein, and my guest today is Colin Taylor, CEO at the Taylor Reach Group. Colin, hey, good to talk to you.
Mark, a pleasure as always, sir.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming on. It's been a little while.
It has, but nice to be able to join you here today and be able to chat contact centers and best practices and all those good things. So, looking forward to a deep and meaningful discussion of CX and all things experience related.
Deep and meaningful. We're going to do it. We're going to do it. So, Colin, I'd be remiss if I didn't start here. Anybody who has seen my baby face knows that I am not 40 years old, but you've had 40 years of experience in the contact center space. Could you take us back and describe back at that time what the contact center space and CX looked like?
Certainly, Mark. And that's one of the nicest ways anyone's ever called me old. So thank you. That's that was great.
Threading a
Um,
thin needle.
Yeah, I've been doing this. This is one of those accidental careers. While going to school, I was working in what we called a telemarketing service bureau in the mid 1970s. And then I graduated in a recession, couldn't get a job for love nor money, went back to doing the telemarketing thing, and the rest, as they say, is history. We didn't call them, even call centers. They were called telemarketing. You would inbound or outbound telemarketing, and it was all phones. A few tin cans and string here and there, but it was quite a different world. Outbound was probably the more prominent of the two because there were no rules around outbound calling in those days. And inbound and toll-free numbers were just being introduced really in the 70s. And the first ACDs, Rockwell didn't introduce their first ACD until 73 or 74. So my God, I am feeling old. Anyway, really back then it was all sort of about customer service. If we look at the inbound side, really not customer experience. We didn't have contact centers, or even call centers, but all we did have was phones and voice. We didn't have IVRs. The first auto attendants hadn't even been invented then. One of our first campaigns in the early 80s was actually doing an endless loop cassette and having somebody listen to figure out which button they had to press to fake basically what we would do to today with an IVR.
Wow.
So and call centers, contact centers, they were seen as as a cost center and a necessary evil. We actually had clients who wanted us to design, when the first IVRs came out, an IVR you couldn't exit because they figured there was no reason why a customer really had to talk to them. And they actually paid us money to do that. So, it later just became a joke in and of itself for Comcast and others that were, we were ascribing bad service experiences to. But, it really was what a lot of organizations were striving for. You know, the telephony itself wasn't seen as really technology. It's hard to ascribe something as advanced, leading edge to technology when somebody in a meeting, as happened to me, picked up the phone on his desk and says, "I have one of these in my house. How hard can that be?" So from that vice president at a packaged goods company to today, we've seen that it can be a challenge. As I said with the IVR story, technology really was a tool to help distance yourself or help to avoid your customers. Whereas today, a lot of these elements have really changed. So technology is seen as a tool to enable better interactions and superior interactions and more convenient interactions. The focus is on the customer. It's on centricity. It's on the experience. And contact centers are representing an investment in serving our customers, which we know leads to greater retention rates and higher lifetime value. So quite a different point of view today than what we would have seen back in the bad old days. Of course, we just barely invented color by then with color TVs, but a little before your time.
So back in that time, if you're setting up, let's say, a telephone service program, telephone customer service program, and you're going through all those steps to keep your costs as low as humanly possible, and to put customers in endless cassette IVR-esque loops. Why even stand up a program? When people went and looked at it and justified it to their executives, what was the explanation at the time they're making, saying this is a valuable function, we should even have this?
Well, it's interesting. If we look at inbound and we look at toll-free numbers, there was a time when they weren't ubiquitous, when they were new and strange, and it really was a response mechanism. And we can credit all of those late night DRTV ads selling us, the 1970s equivalent of Slap Chop or Sham Wow or the Ginsu steak knife. No, wait, the 70s was the Ginsu steak knife. So, and every, recently dead rock star's greatest hits. That's what built up toll-free numbers as a DRTV and contact center response vehicle. And everyone wanted to start putting toll-free numbers on their packaging or on their product or on their ads as a means of generating interaction with customers. And a lot of that was then managed through a sales funnel. So we'd send them coupons and they'd use coupons, and then we'd invite them to bring their friends in, and we'd send them coupons too with Sell Us Your Friend programs or MGM. So a lot of it really evolved out of that initial response marketing activity. And then once you start putting phone numbers on product, people are going to phone you. The Butterball hotline is not real busy until we get to a holiday where people want to cook turkey. Then they're going to say, how fast do I cook this? Can I put it in the microwave? So we start to see activities then, over time, a great passage of time, the catalog, well, actually fairly quickly, you saw catalogers move from direct mail to contact centers. So, if you were calling to order something out of a catalog, you would start ordering it, you'd start phoning the toll-free number associated with it rather than filling in an order card and mailing your payment in. And that sped up that process, and that really was an early precursor to what became e-commerce and the e-com contact centers, where you're doing order support and order track and trace and all these wonderful things that we're doing today. So
one of the things that's so interesting about that is, now it is an omnipresent discussion about, should you view the contact center as a profit center or a cost center? And everyone is starting to, start to tout the virtues of viewing it as a profit center. But the irony sounds like it almost might have not even been a debate in the beginning. Everyone said it is a profit center. This is how we make our money.
Well, it became a way of being able to convert more orders. So if we look at a catalog, if you're ordering 3 things and you're on the fence about the 4th, you might write it in, you might not, and you'd mail it off. If somebody phones and you're going through it, there's an opportunity to actually talk about that 4th product and maybe increase your likelihood of purchasing it on that interaction. So there was an opportunity there, but your cost per order would still have been higher through phone than it was going to be through direct mail. So it still represented a cost, but it gave you an opportunity perhaps to do more add-on sales, to upsell and cross-sell product, which you can't do through the mail terribly well. It would take a long time, but it had new capabilities that didn't exist in the previous channels that it was supplanting. Much in the way that websites and now e-commerce, really, the contact center went from being a piece of that to now just being a support function, of it, rather than very central to it as it was when toll-free numbers were first rolling out as a means of purchasing product.
That's so funny. I'm hearing you talk about mail as a form of marketing and catalogs, and then crossing over and having an agent walk you through options. It almost sounds like omnichannel has been here all along. It was just a little slower.
Yeah, it could take a long time to become an overnight success. I think it took the concept of customer relationships marketing at least 25 years to go from introduction to actually being an overnight success and everyone wanting to embrace it. So, and I think omnichannel is the same way. There have always been multiple channels of buying things. They weren't always directly connected. They didn't always function through a single environment like a contact center, but multiple channels of purchase always existed. Whether you could buy in store or buy through the catalog or the flyer that would come in the mail, or the blow in or bang tail, response device that comes with your magazine or your billing statement. There were lots of ways to buy. And what we see now is sort of a reinvention, which is very contact center and digitally centric. That's all.
What do you think are, if you're moving through time, a few of the biggest innovations that change the contact center space?
As I did point out, the ACD does predate me a little bit. So, but I think certainly that changed the world, because prior to that, everyone had straight lines and their equivalent circuits. And you physically had to have the lines installed and program them to roll over to create a hunt group effectively. And then toll-free numbers, 900 numbers. Who can forget? Well, if you were around, Larry the Lobster on Saturday Night Live, where they had asked everyone to call in and vote whether or not to fry the lobster. And then we start to get into things like IVRs, which initially was just DTMF. It was touch tone, push 1 for this and 2 for that. I remember talking with folks, when speech recognition was first being contemplated, and we had a client who was interested in it, and it was going to cost $500 a word to create a vocabulary, and that was exclusive of the travel expenses, because the broader the campaign, the more accents you might encounter, and we needed umpteen prints of each one of those words with those accents. So very quickly, folks said, "Well, I don't think we're doing that now," but that was 1986. So
Yeah.
So speech rec did come and did fundamentally change IVRs, and then as we look at predictive dialers came in, power dialers. Robo dialers have been around, back to the days of endless loop cassette tapes. But then you start to see some of the regulation that's coming around when people can do outbound calls. The various and sundry regulations. The Telephone Sales Promotion Act, and all of those things that have really restricted outbound dramatically. On inbound side, multi-channel, we start to get into the fact that you can actually have a phone call and do an email and a chat and social media, and that just blew people's minds that you could actually handle all of that. Now, unfortunately, most of them were dedicated silos with work groups, which really wasn't terribly efficient, because if you couldn't do A and you could only do B, you sat there waiting for an interaction while somebody else might be getting slammed. But and then we start to look at omnichannel. We start looking at the ability to promote interactions from channel to channel. We start to see really a more robust rollout of AI. AI really is just algorithms at some level, but it's it's finding the AI algorithms that can be more helpful and that can automate more things to drive self-service. So, at one point when we were working with e-commerce retailers, their number one call type was, "Where's my order?" That was it, number one, and these were all going to a live agent. So, so once the ability existed that we could actually just ping the carrier and, based on a tracking number that was in the email, the customer could look it up themselves, or if they did call, we'd send it through self-service and have them look it up through the IVR. So, now I think in AI, you're seeing lots of exciting things going on around chatbots, around voice bots, around digital agents, and around agent support. I think it's I think that we've all seen chatbots. We're all used to chatbots, and some of them are pretty basic. It's menu driven effectively. It's the IVR comes to your website. And others are a little more intuitive, and they may be better informed through back-end integrations that tell it to go and look for things like much in the way we'd look for CTIs. So we're going to look at an incoming phone number and see if it matches a customer in the database. We might see a customer we've authenticated in the IVR. We might go and see if there's a pending order and ask them if this is related to the order they placed yesterday, or the order that should have been delivered yesterday but that we see wasn't. So AI is enabling a lot more robust interactions. It's also enabling, as have all technology innovations, it's enabling the ability of organizations to automate the easier, the simpler, the more straightforward interactions, while leaving the really complex, difficult, and challenging ones to the live agents. And that's been true from the day we started having the first IVRs to today. So it's been a lot of change, and that's really the only thing that's constant, is that there's always a better mousetrap. There's always a better way of doing everything. We just have to figure it out, and people keep figuring out better ways. So we get new innovations and new technologies and new tools.
I love the attention that the contact center industry is getting from the tech world and even from Silicon Valley right now. That's something that, I remember that back when, Balto was pitching investors in 2017, they go, "Oh, that old dusty space."
Yeah.
And we talk to investors right now and they go, "Great. How similar are you to Five9 and Ring Central?"
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, it's, that goes back to the how hard can a telephone be? I've got one in my house, right? Mm-hmm. So, and if you only have an outside view, then everything looks real simple and straightforward. It's that's that whole beginner's mind thing. An expert only sees one or two ways of doing anything. A beginner, a neophyte to the space sees hundreds of ways to do things, and that's often part of the spark that drives disruption and innovation. Once investors started to see firms like Ring Central and Five9s and get to understand where that complexity lied, they began to see it in a much different way than your father's call center or something, right? So
I think that's one of the cool things that's going on in this space as well, is that now that these technologies, and I'm thinking specifically different AI technologies and chat, have been around for just a little while, instead of the message being deploy chat, deploy chat, deploy chat, the message is like, great, what are the right use cases to deploy chat, and where do we want to have someone in that channel versus another channel? When it comes to chat, what are some of the best practices you've seen of the absolute, where the best companies knock it out of the park with chat and where they might leave it to other channels?
Yeah, I think that that's a great question, and I think it's constantly sort of evolving. I think there's a number of mistakes that folks often make in any type of automation initiative, and chatbots is certainly key amongst them. Is they try and do too much, so they're building a chatbot and they start with a very simple use case, and within 3 weeks they've added 18 other capabilities to it. And 7 months later, it's got 100 functions, none of them can actually do, and then they shelve it and go buy something else anyway. So, keep it simple, stupid is really a good mantra for designing any type of process or automation. With traditional voice chat, lots of organizations may neglect the pre-chat survey. They don't know who it is. They've not identified them in any way. You could then have a deep, meaningful interaction and have absolutely no way to get back to the individual because you haven't asked for any contact details. That's just sad. You've wasted an opportunity. You've invested all of this intellectual effort in educating or communicating or building a rapport and touting the product's features and what the benefits are the users derive, and then you have no way of communicating with them after that because you failed to have a pre-chat survey. So I'd say that is one, and bracketed on that. A post-chat survey is really easy as well. People will fill it in or they won't. But again, that can help you tune the interaction. And what you really want to do is not have sort of, a one size fits all chat product. You want something which is tuned and more of a bespoke interaction tool. So, a lot of organizations then just dump everyone into one chat queue. Meanwhile, we may separate voice queues 16 different ways, but if we don't do the same with chat, where's the logic here? They may look at chat as an efficiency tool. Well, we can handle 8 simultaneous chats. I know, my vendor told me so. And then they try and do that, and of course, the experience is not what they had hoped for, or what their customers may have hoped for. They may try and launch it without making an appropriate investment in terms of developing content, short form content and templates, links that they get, to various and sundry places where they know that from their voice calls where customers want to go. So if those are a lot of the common problems we see, the folks that really do it well do the opposite of all those things. So they want to know who you are and what you're interested in when you come into the chat queue. They want to understand what it is you're trying to obtain. They are not trying to be generalists. They're trying to be specialists down to whatever level of specialization they might have elsewhere within the contact center. They're going to use short form content and templates, but they're not going to make it exclusively, shoving, words at somebody to read. They're going to personalize it through an interaction. They're going to, after any piece of content is shared, there's going to be a validation of, was that what you wanted? Did I understand you correctly? Where do we want to go now? And it all becomes really, how do they help the customer navigate the organization and the interaction that they're endeavoring to have? And then how do we measure productivity and performance on the back end? It's really got to be around customer satisfaction every bit as much as it is around, did we get an order? Did we solve an issue? Did we open a ticket? Mm-hmm. So the operational issues and metrics are every bit as important. They are important, but experiential ones or experience-based metrics have to be core to this as well. So I'm not sure if I answered that question now, Mark. I started wandering all over with it, but
no, I love what the picture you just painted. It's this really robust chat experience, which is the experience that customers actually want. Mm-hmm. When you think about you as a customer interacting, with a chat panel, you're essentially looking for a instantaneous, because the panel just popped up. You're on your website. Mm-hmm. Usually, you're not thinking, I'm going to go to the website and go find the chat. Usually, it popped up as you were searching for some other information. Mm-hmm. So you're looking for some sort of instantaneous interaction, some instantaneous information. And also in a perfect world, you have like this concierge who is perfectly attentive and able to share information with you and even resources and content through this medium that you're both looking at together, rather than having someone on the phone and saying, I'm going to email something. What's the best email address for you? It's in your inbox. Do you want to open that up? So I think you're painting a picture of what a great chat experience looks like and could look like. And I totally see why that would be effective.
Yeah, no, I think you've nailed it. I think that this really is providing the customer with the support they want when they want it. Like the old marketing mantra is, be where your customers want to be. So if they want to interact with you via chat, then make it available, allow them to interact via chat. People aren't selecting chat because they don't want to talk to somebody. They're selecting chat because they see this as an appropriate way to manage this interaction. They may be thinking that there's going to be documents or things I've got to see and I can't find it on the web, so where is it? Mm-hmm. But they may also be thinking that this is asynchronous. This isn't really live. So I can actually be working on something else while still supporting a chat. And every time the chat goes ding, I can go there and look at the stuff, and I can follow the links, and I can provide some feedback, and so I can maintain that dialogue and that interaction out over time, but it's not as tight or as linear as is a live voice call.
Yeah.
Which sometimes folks can't afford to do, every moment. And sometimes they've tried that and they found out what the ETA was, and they've said there's got to be a better way. And email just, is just slow. If you think about I always like the analogy, of the burning of New Orleans, in the War of 1812, which actually happened umpteen weeks after the end of the war. That's because that's how long the news took to get there. So I'm pretty sure they didn't send an email to say the war was over, but but by the same token, why are we delaying things to this point? Obviously the customer wants something, and and our job in contact centers and support centers is to help them achieve their goal, whatever that is. So if they're looking for an answer, let's give them the answer. Why do it slowly? If we, because 9 times out of 10, any answer is going to have a follow-up question. It's not going to be perfectly clear. And so why have these series of monologues that are delayed out over time if we can avoid it? Chat or SMS, which is effectively chat under a different name and without sort of that single interaction wrapper, is much faster. Voice is much faster. So why not provide that feedback immediately and allow the customer to move to wherever they want to go to next, be it buying a product, returning a product, exchanging a product, figuring out how to become a customer. Let's help them.
I do think that's one of the things that's going to change with chat, is that it's going to get faster. Right now, when my fiance walks in the room and says, "Hey, Mark, where do we want to go for dinner this weekend?" If I'm texting, I say, "Oh, I'm sorry, I'm writing a text." I can't do both at the same time, let alone agents trying to manage 8 individual interactions or conversations and try to remember that, and they all kind of blend together. Did I tell that person this? Who was I getting that one pager for? Who was I going to send that security info to? I think it's untenable. So I think we're gonna find that it's gonna go not 1 to 8, but closer to like 1 to 2. And we're going to see a much faster response time, because I'll tell you, as a customer, when I'm chatting and I see those 3 dots and they're just still there and they're still there, I'm like, come on.
What are you writing? War and Peace? And then they come up with a, okay, is all you get. Right. So, but best practice organizations have already figured that out. You try and do too many simultaneous interactions, you're right, you get them confused, mixed up, or you spend additional time rereading the thread to figure out which one you're in, and any advantage you might have thought you're gaining through chat, through a more efficient interaction, is eliminated by the fact that you need longer handle time just to catch up on the stuff, so you don't make mistakes and confuse folks. So we're seeing a lot of clients who are sort of in the 1.8 to 2.5, and that's sort of their, depending on the organization and how robust their systems are and how robust their support and everything is. That's where they find the sweet spot. And that's great. And if it can be a satisfying and productive interaction, it can still be less expensive than voice calls. It's just that folks who start dreaming in Technicolor, about a 1/6 or an 1/8 of the cost of voice, are going to be disappointed. If that's the only reason why they're doing it for the wrong reasons anyway.
Yep. Interestingly, almost that blend of automation between the ability to optimize many interactions with once in chat, and then only having a one-to-one interaction relationship in voice. It seems like we're trying to that with virtual assistants. And I'll tell you that when I call my financial institution, my bank, and I'm using the virtual assistant, the experience is usually awesome. I'm always, because Balto has a speech background, and I think a lot about the transcription quality and the different labeling and how they do event recognition. I'm always really impressed by how I can say things in a pretty colloquial way, and the virtual assistants or virtual agents, whatever you want to call them, will get it. Where do you see that technology heading?
Well, I think we're going to see an increased use of virtual agents, virtual assistants, whatever we want to call them. I think that the libraries and the speech to text and text to speech has become so good. We're not paying $500 a word now, but it's become so good that where it's properly designed and properly trained, you're rarely going to get a hiccup. If I want to find out my bank balance, or I want to find out if a check is cleared, or I want to find out if the money's arrived or the money's left, I don't need to talk to a live agent. I can have a conversation with a virtual agent and get everything I want. Now if I've got more general questions, and we've all played with Siri and Alexa and and Google, you often get them. I can't, I don't think I understand that, or here's what I found on the web, which basically means damned if I know, but here's some stuff to look at. So the technology are going to keep getting better, and our comfort level using them, just the penetration of Echo Dots and Alexa devices is huge. So as our comfort level increases as consumers and users, the technology is going to be better accepted, and we'll be able to roll that into broader and broader applications. The key today, as one of the challenges, I think, is how do we actually build and train things for broader applications? It's akin to an IVR. We can stovepipe a narrow piece of it to do all kinds of wonderful stuff, but it's got to be narrowly defined, because if we make it too wide open, we get confusion, or we haven't trained it and it doesn't understand word choices because we didn't think to include them. And even though we crawled over 80,000 or 1 million records, there's still things that are going to come up that are going to create ambiguity. So I think we're going to see an increase there. I think increasingly you're going to see virtual agents handling live customer interactions, and I think you're going to see customers selecting them given a choice. Because if you have a fairly straightforward or narrowly defined objective in mind, and you may go that route. That may become the next alternative to call back in queue. Is, well, let's try it with the virtual agent, and if we don't get that done, we still got our spot in queue, and we'll go there later. On the other side, while we all can wonder about whether or not we are living in a simulation, and whether or not the HAL 2000 really is here to help us or hurt us, at 2001. But I think that there is a lot that we can do with AI, as on the support side. So if we look at managing multiple chats, where does all that information come from? If we're looking at agents handling complex interactions, where does all that information come from? And today, it never ceases to amaze me the number of workarounds and dysfunction that's built into most contact center data architecture. Not that the call flows don't make sense or anything else. It's just like, you remember that you remember that database that we were going to integrate with a contact center. Well, we never quite did it, so you're going to have to log into that. But it's not in, but we don't have SSO, so it's going to keep timing you out about every 12 minutes. So you'll have to keep relogging in, and and you'll have to be in there in order to open this. And the next thing you know, the agent's got 32 windows opened up on their desktop, 7 of which keep closing every X minutes. So I think there's a lot that we can do utilizing AI tools and guidance tools like Balto has to better support agents or bots, frankly, in getting the information that is going to be needed for that interaction. And that actually becomes an alternative, actually fixing all the bad design and integration pieces for some organizations I've seen. So.
Yeah, Colin, I think there really are two sides to that. One side gets a lot of attention, the other doesn't. The
Hmm.
side that gets a lot of attention is how do we train our AI and our bots and our organizations better to respond to the customer. I think that gets a lot of attention.
Yep.
What doesn't get a lot of attention is how do we train our customers to
Hmm.
interact with us to get what they want as quickly as possible. And I think that there's so much opportunity to train your customers to know how to quickly get what they want and get a great experience from your organization. And a lot of that information is not does not come for top to mind to companies and is
Hmm.
often not shared.
Yeah, well, my dog clearly agreed with you. You might have heard her barking in the background, but with your logo, who could expect anything else, Mark? But I think that that you've really hit on a key point. Education. One of the roles of contact centers or call centers, even back in the day, is we want
Mm-hmm.
to educate our customers on how they can have better and more productive and more successful interactions with us. You know, contact centers exist because we are the native guides. We understand the organization a lot better than the customers do. So we can actually be that guide that can guide them through, the processes and the policies and the procedures that we have to get them to the information.
Yep.
We have an obligation to, if somebody is uncomfortable with technology, but they want to learn it, take the time, walk them through how to put a temporary suspension on whatever service that's getting delivered to their house. Invest the time to make them more informed, and then they will have more options moving forward and more ability to have a positive interaction across multiple channels rather than being solely restricted to one.
And
Um,
if you view your contact center as a cost center, then you will miss that opportunity.
exactly. Exactly. You have to you have to be of the mindset that we're really focused on serving our customers. They're giving us money. We like that. They're customers. They pay us. Wonderful relationship. We'd rather they didn't have any questions or any problems, but life rarely works like that. So we want to then deal with those questions as effectively and efficiently as possible. Now, making them jump through hoops, wait 20 minutes to get an answer on the phone, um, really isn't a way of solving the problem. That's really a way of saying screw you, and if you feel lucky, call us again, and maybe you'll get through this time. Um, we really need to look at putting the customer at the center of everything we do. That's why we exist. Without customers, no one would be in business. So how do we make everything customer centric and customer focused? And if you take that mindset, then investing that extra time in educating a customer now, even though it's going to increase that call length, is a great investment because now they'll be able and more comfortable dealing digitally with us on the website or through self-service digitally or through an IVR. And all of a sudden, we're not having to deal with that with a live agent, and that just becomes a good investment. But if you focus narrowly on it costs money to talk to customers, you're going to miss it, and you're going to be abdicating customers to your competitors who actually get it when you don't.
Colin, that's such a good point. And then the question that I think of is, well, how does a contact center do that? And I'll take the example that you gave for a minute, educating a customer at the end of a call, taking a few extra seconds.
Mm-hmm.
So the next time they're able to solve the issue on their own in a better way or faster way. Um, to do that, it sounds like first you got to change the goals of the organization or the culture of the organization. What are agents, when people think of the purpose of the call, what does everyone agree the purpose of the call is? Then, what is in the agent's scope of how they
Mm-hmm.
should be acting and what is not. So there's the goals, and then there's culture. And then, of
Mm-hmm.
course, you have to actually then get the behavior
Right.
trained in all the agents. So, what does the process look like in order to make that sort of transformation happen?
Yeah, I kid it. I've used the example of you get the CEO and you get a large wooden mallet and something like in the cartoons until something sinks in. But
Little birdies flying around the CEO's
exactly,
head.
the little birdies help. So but the number of times I've heard seen mission statements, and we're going to deliver world class customer service, and a number of times I've had to tell senior C-suite executives that what they're delivering is nothing like world-class, customer service or customer care or customer experience. And and would they like to fix that, or do they want to keep lying to themselves and to anyone who reads these documents? You've touched on a bunch of things. You've really got to change the mindset around what the contact center exists for. It exists to, so we generally work with clients to create a contact center strategic plan. We generally try and create sort of a sub-brand about it. We create guiding principles that are going to help you to define and characterize the contact center, and to have sort of a touchstone to help you make decisions. Personal, premium, and easy was one of our clients. So it's going to be a personalized interaction. We're selling a premium product, so we are a premium white glove service. But above all, we're just going to make it easy for you. So we can show you what to do. We can do it for you. Whatever you want, we got it. And that became the mantra. And then when they looked at what customers were asking, did it align with any of those? Recognize, respond, and reward was another client. It's not always 3 words, all starting with the same letter, but in this case they were. And that was, we are going to recognize our customer. We're going to celebrate the fact that they've been a customer for 8 years. We're going to, ask them how their purchase of blah was. We're going to respond to their queries in a straightforward, honest, and authentic manner. And we're going to try and add a value or add an extra reward to that interaction, so that they go away with a bit of a wow feeling. So, when you start architecting the experience that way, then it changes how you hire, how you train, and how you manage your contacts. It's interesting that, the client where we're talking about teaching you how to do stuff, that was actually aligned with their goal of maximizing IVR capture. And these were folks who could have done something on the IVR, but didn't. So we wanted to make sure that we could show them exactly how to do it on the IVR or online.
Nice.
And have them think that we've been helpful. Well, we're selfish, frankly. We're reducing our cost to serve and improving your satisfaction and making it easier and faster for you. And if we're all happy with that, then that's a great experience.
Colin, you made me think of one of the technological inventions that I think is the absolute coolest thing in the world is the Domino's pizza tracker. Have you ever used that thing?
Yes. Yeah.
I freaking love that thing. And like, it just delights the end user. It delights the customer. But in the beginning, when you were talking about how the number one inquiry was, where's my order? It made me think, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Did Domino's do that to decrease their costs? Really cool how there's two sides. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, oftentimes what is a cool technology innovation that allows you to provide service in a different way, faster, easier, is also cheaper. And that's exactly the case with Pizza Tracker. And Pizza Tracker, the same approach is used in all kinds of different organizations. There are health plan operators who have that equivalent. So, because we've helped them build it. So that's how I know. But we want to help the customer achieve whatever the customer wants to achieve. And then the key for the operator is really, how do we design that experience to match what the customer wants to achieve and still align with their business goals and objectives. And wherever we can use technology to help facilitate that isn't in contrast with or in conflict with the customer's objective, then that's great. Where you try and cram technology down somebody's throat, that's when they're unhappy. That's when the robots are coming to get us. And and CSAT and loyalty and repurchase and NPS scores all tumble at that juncture. Make it available, and then provide an educational capability to help folks utilize it. Some folks never will, and that's fine. That's still, if that's still a valuable customer, it's still a valuable customer. And frankly, if anything, you have more time to spend with them because you've been able to happily automate all these other folks who are very pleased with the ability they have to self-serve or to chat or to deal in SMS or whatever channel, video, whatever channel they need to go to get what they need.
So Colin, I'm thinking about how all this fits together. And I noticed that you all have, I think, what you call the Taylor Reach designed customer experience contact center model. Can you tell us what that's about?
That just rolls off your tongue, Mark. I could tell you, but then I'd have to kill you. So, no, it's
TRDCECC.
yes, MOUSE. Okay, it's
Yeah.
when we get into alphabet like that, I keep thinking emails. But um, you know, we've really, the elements we've talked about here in this call. Putting the customer at the center of the interaction, providing appropriate tools and appropriate practices. Folks like to benchmark against best practice and think we should all be best practice. Well, probably not. There's probably a gap between your current practice and best practice, but there may be some middle ground that is actually a more appropriate practice. Not every customer expects the gold seal of approval and full white glove service, or maybe a portion of your customers do, but many don't. So you don't necessarily just want to fall in line and march towards best practices if they're not appropriate. So we look at each organization individually, customer at the center. We're trying to deliver a specific and defined customer experience. We're coaching that in guiding principles and a contact center brand. And we're ensuring that all of the metrics are furthering our operational and our experiential goals and objectives. So, that's probably as easy a way to sort of walk through it. There's lots more I could talk, but I just bore you now, and we'd be covering ground we've already covered. So.
No, Colin, that is so cool. I've never thought about that of, where do you need a best practice and where do you need a practice?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. No, it's, there's lots of organizations who can spend very large amounts of money on technologies that may enable a best practice that most organizations can't justify the funding for. Now, that doesn't mean that they can't get a good practice, and we can't lose sight of the fact that great is the enemy of good. If you only aspire to best practices and the greatest way of doing things, you'll constantly overlook good ways of doing things that might more than meet the need of your organization and of your customers. And great tends to be much more complicated to deliver as well. So,
how does a contact center leader think through when they're looking at all these different dials they can play with and areas that they can dial up and invest in, and areas that go, any practice that's decent is good enough? How does a contact center leader think through where they should dial up and invest in best practice and where they should just settle for good?
Yeah, I think you look at that really from the two extremes. Where are your pain points and the areas that keep screwing up, that keep causing the organization either money or embarrassment or dissatisfaction or confusion to our customers, and where are the areas where we can optimally make more money or generate a better experience and improve loyalty and lifetime value. So if you look at those pain points and you look at those opportunity areas together, sometimes they align. And it's like, not only, could we be doing a whole lot better here, we could eliminate a problem. So, you look at where you can have the most impact at reducing, damn, wish that hadn't happened. And, and maximize the, wow, that was fantastic. I'll be a customer for life. And where do I sign up to buy more? So we need you need to have you need to have that that lens that can look at both of those almost simultaneously. Incremental change is fine, but incremental change isn't going to change the world. And most incremental change, if it's being done as a standalone, likely is requiring you to make compromises to bigger processes or systems or ways of doing things that could actually become a pain point in some period of time. So tweaks are great, but you've got to acknowledge that, what is the reason for doing the tweak? What is, and how does that compare with fixing big problems or capitalizing on big opportunities?
Colin, if you follow the breadcrumbs from where we are now with all of the major transformations and big leaps we're taking, as well as the incremental changes, and you follow it all the way to 2030, what do you think the contact center of 2030 looks like?
Well, I don't even want to think how long I will have been in the business at that point. I'm wondering now if you'll be 40 yet. That's all. No, I'm kidding.
Almost.
I think. Thank you. Feeling very old now. Let me get my walker. I think that we're going to see this. Again, an automation hub. We're going to have much more information, which is transparent between the organization and the consumer. One of the most telling exercises is to sit down with a contact center operator and talk about their knowledge base and what's public and what's private. And it's like, oh, okay, so your agents can see this, but you can't let your customers see this, right? Why? And sometimes there's a rationale for it, and sometimes it's just because we don't want them to know that. But I think that we're going to increasingly see self-service and customer-defined automation. So if I want to interact, using a bot or a virtual assistant or a digital agent or whatever we're going to call them, I'm going to be able to do that. I think we're also going to see the fact that systems and organizations are going to become much more capable of identifying needs in advance. We're going to know about a defect with a problem, and we're going to push out a solution to them that's going to be centered around self-service. That's not going to need a live person to do it. The number of times organizations fret about how much it's going to cost to do something that's going to add up to $1 million or $2 million when they're talking about a $100 million mistake. Yeah, money's money. If you put that in my pocket, it's real money. But at the end of the day, sometimes we need to stop worrying about the pennies and nickels, and focus on the bigger issue. There have been a few case studies done on where the organization wasn't going to provide a refund for whatever outage or service interruption, and then it cost them more to actually keep saying no than it would have cost them to give everybody the refund for whatever that period was, and they would have looked a little better at the end of the day as well. So I think it'll be defined by the consumer and by the customer, and I think that that agents will be specialists. They'll be there for the truly, wow, haven't heard that one before, or how is that even possible? And it'll be more like a collaboration opportunity. I think organizations will more open up their internal systems and bots with appropriate security, to see where gremlins crawled into the data schema, right? So, what do you mean I'm dead? I'm pretty sure I checked and I'm not dead yet. So, what piece of data, got changed to make it look like I died last year, as opposed to, I became a gold customer last year. So, I think that, it's all going to be much more automated. And I think automation will become so much easier because you're just going to have the technology listen to live people do it and define those processes based on how human beings do it, not how IVRs do it, or pressing 1 for this or 2 for that, or screaming agent at the top of your lungs. I think that it'll be more intuitive, and it'll be consumer and customer led. So it may not be, it won't look like what it does now, and they won't employ as many people, I suspect. But
how funny is it that decades from now we'll be telling our children and our grandchildren, in order to get a person, we used to have to say agent. Colin, this has been one of the most fun episodes I think we've recorded. Thank you so much for making time. I know how busy you are, and joining us. Thank you for sharing everything, all of your wisdom that you've learned over probably a very short period of time.
Marc, it's been a real pleasure. I've enjoyed our chat, and this has been great. So thank you very much. And let me know when your 40th birthday is coming up, so I can get you something really nasty.
Yeah, like a bottle of whiskey or something.
There, yeah, a bottle of whiskey older than you or something. Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, it won't be hard. Colin, thanks again, my friend. Talk soon.
All right, Mark. Thanks. Bye bye.